The Federal Trade Commission is suing one of our country's top anesthesia staffing companies. The lawsuit is against Anesthesia Partners and its private equity backer, Welsh, Carson, Anderson, and Stowe. The FTC is accusing both of scheming over the course of a decade to acquire anesthesia practices in Texas, getting a monopoly over the market and driving up prices.
Just when you thought suing Amazon would take up all of her time and energy, Lina Khan, head of the FTC, strikes again. This time she's suing private equity-backed medical staffing group, a medically backed staffing group that allegedly is violating antitrust laws by scooping up and consolidating anesthesia practices in the state of Texas. Now, this has terrible consequences for patients, especially when it comes to their resources and how much they pay for care. Now, the agency brought the civil lawsuit in federal court against US Anesthesia Partners and Welsh, Carson, Anderson, and Stowe, which is a private equity firm that operates out of New York. Now, US Anesthesia Partners is pretty massive at this point. They have about 4,500 clinicians serving a whopping 2 million patients, okay? Now, the FTC claimed that the group and the private equity firm financing it were consolidating doctors groups in Texas, which again has some consequences when it comes to how much money you pay for the care you need. So Khan said this in a statement announcing the lawsuit. Private equity firm Welsh Carson spearheaded a roll-up strategy and created US Anesthesia Partners to buy out nearly every large anesthesiology practice in Texas. Along with a set of unlawful agreements to set prices and allocate markets, these tactics enabled USAP and Welsh Carson to raise prices for anesthesia services, raking in tens of millions in extra dollars for these executives at the expense of Texas patients and businesses. Listen, sometimes you hear liberal Democrats talk about like girl bosses. This is a girl boss. Yep. Unafraid, and despite all the attacks she gets, she keeps fighting, and she fights for ordinary people who are getting screwed over by these business practices. She also said that the FTC will continue to scrutinize and challenge serious acquisitions, roll-ups, and other stealth consolidation schemes that unlawfully undermine fair competition and harm the American public. And guess what? This case seems pretty open and shut to me, mainly because of the statements made publicly by their own executives. I'll give you a little taste. Brian Regan, the head of Welsh Carson's health care group, who sat on the board of US Anesthesia Partners, was quoted in the lawsuit as telling lenders who were financing a key deal that the firm planned to, quote, build a platform with national scale by consolidating practices with high market share in a few key markets and to improve negotiating leverage with insurers, meaning maximizing profits. But hey, maybe that statement wasn't clear enough for people. I'll give you another one. After learning of the strategy, an executive in a practice the firm bought in Austin, Texas responded, "Awesome, cha-ching," according to the suit.
Yeah.
So Ramesh, what are your thoughts on this? Because this has been an ongoing issue. Some of the mergers and acquisitions that took place for US Anesthesia Partners happened under the FTC under the Obama administration. So in 2015, one of these mergers happened. And of course, that FTC didn't really do anything to stop it. Things are a little different with Lina Khan and Biden's FTC. What are your thoughts on it?
No, I mean, I actually have been following Dr. Khan's work for many years, dating back to her time at Columbia Law School, where she authored perhaps the most widely cited and influential paper on the need to regulate and break up Amazon, actually.
Right. Yep.
Which is why Amazon, very soon after her appointment to chair the FTC, sent various sorts of essentially cease and desist types of letters well beforehand. And Dr. Khan, along with Tim Wu, another cherished colleague of mine, are two of the better folks in the administration, along with folks in the National Labor Relations Board. I know you've spoken about that on the Young Turks.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, this is kind of what we get with Biden and Harris. We have some legitimate, I guess we will call them progressives, but they're essentially truth tellers. They're legitimate scholars who are investigating the political economy, which is essentially the basis by which private corporations are able to usurp and dominate and therefore strangle free markets. And I think what's important to note in terms of this specific lawsuit, as well as Lina Khan's previous actions and discussions in relation to other mega consolidations, is all of this is going after what we call the platformization of everything, right? You can imagine, with the world of one of free markets, but actually the website or the so-called service or institution you go to access that so-called free market is some type of platform. And they present themselves just like Amazon. Okay, you can buy potentially anything and everything on Amazon. But what very few know is that behind the scenes, and this in the case of Amazon, it's mysterious algorithmic processes.
Right.
But in this case, it's also very similar in its own right. It's just mysterious, kind of processes behind the scene with this big pharmaceutical platform. There's lots of ways of gaining the system, manipulating products, manipulating prices, manipulating what it gets exposed to what. And all of that lacks any transparency, and all of it is actually a violation of a free market.
Yeah.
So Adam Smith would be turning over in his grave if he saw the status quo of what has happened with not just mega corporate economics, but mega corporate economics that violate a free market that has come to be right now. And Adam Smith, even not to get too academic about it.
I love that you're mentioning this. Cenk referenced a little bit of Adam Smith and his views on monopolies and this kind of dominance and lack of choice in the market. And I think it's really important to understand that, because when you don't have options, when there aren't multiple companies competing with one another, they can raise prices to whatever they want. And that is the problem that the FTC has noticed under the leadership of Lina Khan. Yeah. And I love that you brought up Wu. We're gonna go to a video where he addresses this very issue in just a moment. But did you want to finish that point?
Yeah. So you actually literally used the term stealth consolidation to discuss that very issue. And that's exactly how platforms function of all types. They, in a stealthy way, in a way that's hidden and disguised from the transparency of the so-called free market, actually manipulate prices, construct consumption, and so on. And so that's actually exactly what's happening. And Adam Smith even argued for many things that should lie outside of the domain of the free market. He called it moral sentiments.
Right.
So Smith himself recognized the incompleteness of the free market, and I'm no Adam Smith acolyte necessarily, but what we have now is a massive zombification through hidden, mysterious, opaque practices that manipulate and strangle markets, because what we have now is in almost any domain of contemporary capitalist life, it's not actually a free market on any level at all.
That's exactly right. I totally agree with you on that. And I wanted to go to this video featuring Tim Wu, who is an expert in antitrust. He is an advisor to the Biden administration on antitrust related issues. And during a fairly recent appearance on CNBC, he addressed how the consolidation in the healthcare industry is really where we see the worst practices in regard to how consumers are affected by costs and lack of options. Let's watch.
The last 10 years, last 20 years, a lot of mergers happened that did not benefit consumers. Airline mergers all over the healthcare industry. And they're looking back, a lot of hospital mergers, and like, look, prices went up, things got worse, we blew it.
Healthcare is a lot different than technology, though.
It is, but it's actually worse, I think, in some of the merger practices.
Yes. Like, where do you think?
Most of the hospital mergers you look at have led to higher prices, worse patient outcomes, and have led to workers getting less money. So if you look at the history of, they decided we really got to crack down on hospitals, for example. Some of the practice group, Lina Khan just brought a case study against practice group merger, where you roll up all the anesthesiologists and then they raise their prices. I mean, these are not good for American consumers or for American business.
So I want you to weigh in on the distinction that the CNBC host tried to make between, tech, because you're an expert in tech,
sure,
and the healthcare industry. And I love that Wu said, yeah, it's actually worse in the healthcare industry. I should also note that in the continuation of that conversation, the CNBC host tried to argue that no, it's not mergers and acquisitions, it's not antitrust violations that's leading to the prices skyrocketing for healthcare services. It's really Obamacare. It's the Affordable Care Act. That's the reason why, which is nonsense. But before we get to that, can you just address what he had to say there?
Yeah, I mean, Tim Wu actually, if I'm not mistaken, coined the term net neutrality, and is one of my more beloved colleagues, someone I've had interactions with for probably a decade or so. And Tim's work has been focused, I think him and Lina Khan are both faculty at Columbia Law School. His work has been focused on looking at kind of the hidden, again, super creepy practices by which technology platforms have consolidated power. But his classical work actually looked at antitrust action and how antitrust action, the last major antitrust action taken in the United States, was actually levied against AT&T. We all know AT&T is doing quite well right now.
Right.
And it's quite a creepy company in its own rights in terms of its complicity with NSA spying and so on, dating back to the Snowden days, right? So I think what Tim Wu does in his work and is now doing in the public eye, which I'm so glad he's part of this administration, is actually look at unfair business practices that engage in, again, that stealthy consolidation of power. So we need to be agnostic to what the field is or the domain is, because calling something tech doesn't make any sense anymore. Tech has taken over everything, right? So it's actually, we just have to look at the consolidation of power and how that functions and how that is a violation, obviously for workers, but also for consumers as well.
Absolutely, and the concern here, according to the FTC, is the lack of options and the high prices as a result of these business practices. As one insurance executive summarized, USAP and Welsh Carson used acquisitions to take the highest rate of all and then peanut butter spread that across the entire state of Texas. It might sound delicious, but it's not. Welsh Carson and USAP euphemistically referred to this practice, wielding its increasingly dominant market position to net tens of millions of dollars in additional profits as, and I love when they use this word, synergies. They like the business community loves to use that word, and I don't think they even really know what it means, or they don't intend to know what it means. It's just a word that they think sounds good enough to make them sound like experts, like individuals who know what they're doing. And I should note, they're also being accused of conspiring with another large anesthesia company to basically stay out of its market in Texas, which again gives the consumer, gives the patients less options and allows the USAP to essentially decide what the prices are and force that upon the patients. And this is really something that's taking place across the healthcare industry. It's not just in regard to anesthesia practices. We're seeing it in other cases as well. Research published in JAMA Forum a year ago found that private equity acquired physician practices charged on average 20% more per patient claim than the study's control group.
Because the mechanism, Anna, is to capture and dominate the so-called free market.
Right.
Redirect everybody to your platform, whether it's a digital platform or it's something like a pharmaceutical so-called.
Or a doctor's group.
And then once you have kind of conquered the market, knocked out competition and busted up unions, which is what Amazon is an expert in, but all big corporations want to do that. Then you price hijack, right? And you construct dependency. So there's sort of a doping up that's occurring both, that's my pun, in the sense of anesthesia doping us up, but actually these forms of corrosive anti-market behavior are actually doping up our entire population. So I'm very grateful that the Federal Trade Commission, for I think the first time in my lifetime, has some actual teeth to it.
Yeah, doing their jobs. That's what this is. And the business community is incensed over that, and I enjoy watching it.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.